There is nowhere for you to run.
Maybe, but you forgot one thing. The power-up. Delicious.
Pacman, the game where you play as a yellow circle, going through a maze, eating dots, and avoiding ghosts. It is a classic game that is still remembered to this day, and like most popular games at the time, Pacman tried his shot with other game genres, and more specifically, the platforming games. This led to the game Pacman World.
But since I don't have a PlayStation, we're not going to be talking about that game. Instead, we're going to talk about the game's sequel, Pacman World 2. This game also comes with a second game, Pacman Versus. But that one is multiplayer only, and you need to have a Game Boy Advance to play it, so we're just going to look at Pacman World 2. Anyway, let's get started. So the game begins in Pac Village, where we see our four main ghosts causing havoc. It is here you can see the developers tried to give the ghosts their own identities. Blinky is the leader, Pinky has a crush on Pac-Man, Inky is a magnet for trouble, and Clyde is a paranoid scaredy cat. And that's pretty cool. If only they did something with this! Yeah, they could have just left this out and pretty much changed nothing about the game. It's kinda sad. All four of them come to the center of the village and they find a tree bearing golden fruit. They decide to take the fruit for themselves, and what do they do with them? Play around with them, of course. Because, you know, that's exactly what I would do when I find something valuable. Well, hello there, Golden Chinese Bowl. You're looking elegant today. Oh, I know. Well, it turns out that picking fruit that doesn't belong to you is a bad idea, because in doing so, they released an ultimate evil which, of course, plans on taking over the world. The next morning, Professor Pat comes along and tells Pac-Man about the evil that the ghosts have unleashed. And what does this ultimate evil go by?
All-powerful ghost known as Spooky.
Yes, the ultimate evil in this game is called Spooky. Couldn't they have come up with a better name for something that has a silhouette like this? I mean, seriously, Spooky's an adjective, not a name. I mean, if it is a name, it would be a name for something like a dog, or a cat, or like an adorable ghost. I mean, couldn't you have come up with something better than just Spooky? So Professor Pac tells us the story about how
Sir Pac
defeated Spooky with the help of
the Great Wizard Pac.
They both sealed Spooky away with the help of the 5 golden fruit. Now, Pac-Man must retrieve the golden fruit and defeat Spooky,
or all of Pac-Land will be doomed.
Okay, I have one question for you. When did we get that armor? So your plan is to send me to go fight this evil villain with nothing to defend myself. No weapons, no armor, nothing. Good luck fighting the ultimate evil with your bare hands. This is a great idea. Now for the gameplay. The controls are pretty responsive, though the jump is a little floaty, so it takes some time to get used to. The first attack is the butt bounce, which can also be used for opening crates and activating switches. You can use the flip kick to attack airborne enemies in crates, and you can rev roll to clear small gaps. The game also features a large variety of enemies, though most enemies can be killed the same way. Although there are others that can only be killed by other means. There are also different types of ghosts, which can only be killed by obtaining a power pellet. Then the ghosts will temporarily turn blue, and you can eat them. So if you don't catch the ghost in time, I'm afraid the ghost can't be killed. In every stage, there's objects that you can collect. These include pack dots, fruit, and tokens. The tokens are used to unlock games in the arcade, like the classic Pacman, Pack Attack, and Pacmania. You can also unlock the Pac Museum and Miss Pac-Man if you have enough time. Because, well, not only do you have to collect all 8 tokens in each level, but you would then also have to complete the time trials, as well as collect all the collectibles, including the Galaxians. What are the Galaxians, you ask? They are a sprite from another Namco game called Galaxian, and when you collect it, it teleports you into a sub-level based on the classic Pac-Man. If you're able to complete that level, then you will be able to play it at the arcade. If you have the time to collect those tokens, then good for you. I myself don't really have the time to do that. I love the main theme. It is catchy, but it also has a calming feel to it. Kind of like a meadow. As for the rest of the soundtrack, the music is very atmospheric and fits the level very well. Here are a few examples. Now it's time to talk about some of the flaws that this game has, and believe me, there are quite a few flaws. One major problem is the awkward camera controls. The camera seems to make it really hard to see the environment around you. There have been so many times where I died because of the camera. Then there are times when the camera locks into place. Now this might not be so bad, but it seems to lock into place where there's thin platforms and ledges that I have to climb. But that is just the beginning. The power-up system is also kind of lackluster. Aside from the power pellet, there are only 2 power-ups in the entire game. The first is the steel power-up, which makes you immune to enemies, fire, and lava. It also makes you walk underwater. That is fine, but it's mostly used to solve puzzles. Then there's the shrink pellet, which makes you smaller. However, it is only used twice in the entire game. Once to introduce the power-up, and the other to get a hidden Galaxian. It's kind of a shame. I wonder what else they could have done if they had some more power-ups or given some more opportunities to use the shrink pellet. Though that is an extremely minor complaint. Most of the levels in this game pretty much play the same. You have to walk from point A to point B. Though there are a few levels that do break the mold. There is an ice skating level and a roller skating level. Those are pretty much fine, although the roller skating level does come out of nowhere. On a side note, I really enjoyed the ice skating level, especially the fact that it gives out a lot of extra lives. However, then there's the underwater levels, and those are really frustrating. The controls are inverted like a flying game, you are always moving forward, the enemies are so hard to avoid, and you have one attack and it has to be precise. And once you do it, it leaves open for attack for a few seconds. Not to mention there are hazards everywhere, and some of the hazards are even immune to your one attack, like the jellyfish and the mines. So many mines. Then there's the depth charges, the electric eels. Seriously, how do you expect me to avoid all those things if I can't even stop? They're everywhere! If it wasn't for these checkpoints, I probably would have taken this level forever. Oh, but halfway through you get the submarine. Think that makes it better? Oh no, it gets worse. Imagine the swimming levels, but this time in a fog. What is worse than having too many enemies on screen? not being able to see them until they're right in front of your face. Yeah, sure, you have missiles, but you can only fire 6 missiles at a time. Although they do return after a few seconds, and even sooner if a missile hits an enemy. There is also a super bomb that can blow up everything on screen, but it shows up when you don't really need it. And while you can hold on to it and use it whenever you want, it's kind of hard to choose an appropriate time when there are mines everywhere! Not to mention you lose the bomb if you get hit by an enemy. Then there are these guns, which are pretty useful, but they only show up one time in the level. Oh god, look at these mines! I mean, just look at them! And you know what's worse? The ghosts! They have their own submarines and they shoot missiles at you! And they always gang up on you! And these levels are way too long to complete, made even longer because of all the deaths! Now let's talk about the boss battles. First boss is titled Blinky's Frog. However, that is Clyde, so it should be called Clyde's Frog, which gives it a missed opportunity to make a South Park reference. Anyway, since he's the first boss, he's pretty easy. In fact, he's so easy that he practically tells you how to beat him. However, this makes sense because Clyde is considered to be the dumbest of the 4 ghosts. Next boss is Inky's Blade-O-Matic. It's a giant ghost mech, which actually looks pretty cool. This one requires a bit more strategy to beat him. You can hurt him by rev-rolling into its side or butt-bouncing on the dome. He is a bit harder, but not that hard. Then it's Pinky's Revenge, and... Really? This is the same boss fight. Same ghost mech, same weaknesses. The only difference is that it shoots snowballs, and it's more difficult. But seriously, couldn't they come up with a different boss design? Next is Clyde, or should I say Blinky in the Caldera. And oh come on! The same boss 3 times in a row? Did they just run out of ideas after the second boss? Though to be fair, this one is immune to the rev roll attacks, and therefore the only weakness is the dome. This actually makes it a pretty hard boss. It took me quite a while to beat this, even back when I was a kid. Let me tell you, the difficulty of that boss still haunts me to this day. Oh yeah, and remember those underwater levels? Well, they have a boss battle too. And if you thought the last boss was hard, well, let me introduce you to the Whale of a Sub. First off, let me just say that I'm glad that this is not another ghost mech. It's good to see something different. And it is also nice to see all the ghosts working together. But that's pretty much all the good things I have to say about this. You know, I don't think hard would be the right word for it. A better word would be cheap. First off, its only attack is dumping trash all over you, and you can only damage it if you're close to it, which rarely happens because most of the time it doesn't show up and lets its henchmen do the work for him. So you have to wait for the sub to show up, then attack one of its weak spots while avoiding the trash it dumps onto you, then it runs away and lets its henchmen come back to finish you off again. And you can imagine how frustrating this boss fight is when you also have to use the crazy underwater controls. And when that boss fight was finally over, I did not feel any accomplishment for it. Now it is time to talk about the final boss of the game. If you don't want any spoilers, then skip to the time provided on the bottom of the video. We return to the tree and give back the golden fruit. And as a reward, we get turned into... Golden Pacman!
Gold is good to go!
But Spooky returns, and he raises the tree into the air to begin our final battle. Say, you know what could be useful right about now? Some armor! Okay, all joking aside, let's talk about Spooky. Now, while I did say that Spooky is a terrible villain name, I actually do like his design. Cartoonish, yet intimidating. Also, that dead Pac-Man on his chest is a really nice touch. This is actually a pretty solid boss fight. He can shoot you with fireballs as well as summon enemies to attack you. He can also cast a variety of other spells like gas clouds, confusion spells, and even a fire that follows you. You need to keep yourself constantly moving in order to watch out for his attacks. Luckily for you, the enemies he summons can drop health pickups, but you still have to avoid Spooky's attacks. His only vulnerability is when he's low to the ground, but that is also when he attacks you with his rapid fire spell, so you need to make sure you can get close to him and still avoid his attacks. So just give him a few good kicks in the rear and the world is saved from his tyranny, I guess.
Wait, hang on. Let me think about this for a moment. Let's see, we have meadow, forest, snow, lava,
Underwater, spooky swamp, final boss, and
that's it.
so what was his plan? Are you telling me that throughout the entire game we never know what Spooky's plan is? The only time we see him outside of the final boss fight is at the end of the stage that comes before the final boss. Who was he? Why does he want to take over the world? How did he take over the world before? Why does he even want to take over the world? We know nothing about him! What a waste of good character building. So the world is saved, everyone's happy, and the pack dog chases the ghosts away before they have a chance to free Spooky again. Everything is back to normal. And let's hope that the people of Pac-Land will invest in a better security system than fruit. Anyway, this game is pretty good. Despite its awkward camera, the lack of story, and the frustrating underwater levels, it is still a pretty fun platformer. The controls are responsive and easy to learn, the visuals are great, the environments are all colorful and well detailed, and the soundtrack is catchy and sets the right mood for each level. They could have done a much better job with the story, like they could have at least showed some cutscenes from the bad guy's perspective. There were also some mechanics that could have used a bit more polishing, but overall it is a pretty solid platformer, good for any casual Pac-Man fan. I'm the Redshirt Reviewer, and thanks for watching.